The night sky above the Petch Valley burned black and silver. No moon, just starlight glinting off rock and rifle barrels. Down in the basin, an entire battalion crouched behind shattered walls and dry riverbeds, pinned in a kill box they never saw coming. Incoming mortars cracked the darkness. Each blast echoed off 3 converging ridgelines, a sound that rattled bone and helmet alike. Machine gun tracers stitched across the valley floor, red arcs slicing the cold air. Command chatter hissed through every headset. Alpha 6, this is Overwatch. Request immediate air support. Static, delay. Negative Overwatch. No clear authorization for close air or sniper engagement. Hold position. Hold position meant wait to die. The Marines were running dry. Magazines clattered empty. Corpsmen worked by flashlight, hands slick with dust and blood. Every ridge around them lit with muzzle flashes. Enemy fighters tightening the noose with disciplined patience. Above the chaos, 2 miles away, a lone observation post clung to a jagged cliff. Inside the cramped nest of sandbags and camouflage netting, Staff Sergeant Maya Ramirez lay prone behind a long-barreled M40A6 sniper rifle. Her spotter, Corporal Tex Dawson, scanned the valley through a thermal scope, jaw tight, radio silent. They had the angle. They had the shot. But higher command hadn't given the green light. Rules of engagement were clear. No firing without direct battalion authorization. One wrong trigger pull could ignite an international incident. Ramirez listened to the overlapping calls for help. Winchester on ammo. We need steel now. Her gloved hand adjusted the windage knob, 1 click left. Breath steady. Heartbeat slow. She could see the mortar team setting up for the final strike. 3 silhouettes shifting behind a rock ledge at Rune 200 meters. Protocol said wait. Her gut said act. The wind carried another mortar thump from the enemy side. Down in the valley, 480 Marines braced for impact. Ramirez exhaled, finger resting on the trigger. Tex whispered, "Your call, ice." The next second would decide whether an entire battalion lived to see sunrise. Before the killbox night, before the valley lit with tracers, Staff Sergeant Maya Ramirez had already earned a reputation that carried across the Marine Corps sniper community. Call sign ICE, not for a lack of heart, but for the way she could slow time behind a scope. Ramirez grew up in the sagebrush flats of southern New Mexico. Her father, a retired Border Patrol officer, taught her marksmanship on a rusted .22 rifle before she could spell the word trajectory. Weekends meant sunrise drives to the desert, where the air was thin and the targets were beer cans stacked on fence posts. Her father's lessons were simple. Slow is smooth. Smooth is fast. Patience beats speed every time. Maya learned to wait for the wind, to read the quiver of mesquite branches, to trust math more than impulse. That patience followed her to Quantico. At the Marine Corps Scout Sniper School, she placed first in every field test: range estimation, concealment, stalking. Instructors joked she had a metronome for a heartbeat. Others called her the Ghost, because her ghillie suit tracks disappeared before evaluators could spot her. Graduation orders stamped her as a force multiplier, one Marine whose rifle could shift an entire battlefield. Afghanistan was her 3rd deployment, but Kunar province was different. Steeper ridges, denser tree lines, an enemy that knew every goat trail and shadow. For this mission, she was assigned Overwatch on a remote plateau 2 clicks north of the Petch Valley. Her team call sign, Raven 2. Objective, provide long-range intelligence and, if cleared, precision fire to protect the 3rd Battalion Marines moving through the basin. Ramirez treated preparation like religion. Before dusk, she logged every detail. Temperature drops, cross-valley winds, even the angle of the moon's pull on thin mountain air. Her field notebook read like a pilot's flight log: distance tables, slope calculations, humidity drift. While other teams relaxed between radio checks, Maya ran quiet drills, cycling her bolt without sound, adjusting parallax until the reticle felt like an extension of her eye. The only person who could break that silence was her spotter, Corporal Travis Tex Dawson. A tall Texan with a crooked grin and a habit of quoting country lyrics over the comms. He was the counterweight to her measured calm. Tex teased her about writing poetry in the wind charts. She countered with a single raised eyebrow that meant focus. Their rhythm was unspoken. He read atmospherics. She calculated drop. Two professionals locked in a language of hand signals and half smiles. On the plateau that night, Tex sensed the tension tightening like a coiled spring. He cracked a quiet joke about trading sniper rifles for fishing rods when they rotated home. Maya didn't answer. She only noted the shift in barometric pressure, the faint tremor of distant mortars, and the creeping certainty that their math might soon decide whether hundreds of Marines lived or died. The valley below was about to call in every lesson she'd ever learned. The first request for extraction came at 0200 hours. Alpha 6 to Overwatch. Request immediate exfil. Civilians in area. Hostile force increasing. The reply from Regional Command was a wall of clipped radio static, then a cold sentence. Negative. Extraction delayed. Possible non-combatants in engagement zone. Hold position until further assessment. Hold position meant stay inside the kill box. Down in the basin, 480 Marines crouched behind shattered mud walls and dried creek beds. They'd moved in expecting a routine night patrol. Instead, enemy spotters had funneled them into a natural bowl, ridgelines on three sides, a river at their backs. Every path out now crosshaired by fighters who knew the terrain like a childhood backyard. Ammo reports bled across the net. Charlie 2 down to half mags. Echo 4, one belt left for the saw. The words that froze every operator's spine followed minutes later. Winchester. Repeat Winchester on ammo. Out of bullets, the medevac birds weren't coming. Weather over Jalalabad had turned ugly. Low ceiling, sleet at altitude, rotors grounded. Even if they launched, the valley's narrow approach meant pilots would fly through a curtain of RPG fire. Command couldn't risk it, so the wounded stayed where they fell, corpsmen pressing tourniquets in the red dust while mortars walked closer with cruel precision. From her perch 2 miles north, Staff Sergeant Maya Ramirez listened to every call. The comms hissed in her headset like an angry snake. Through her thermal scope, the valley glowed with heat signatures, white sparks of Marines hugging cover, red streaks of enemy fighters fanning into attack columns. Each minute the dots multiplied. Enemy mortars began bracketing the basin, finding their range with methodical cruelty. One shell detonated just short of the Marine command post, showering the radio tent with rock fragments. Another landed 30 meters closer. The next would be dead on. Tex wiped a sleeve across his scope, breath fogging the glass. Targets multiplying on the south ridge, he whispered. His voice carried the faint drawl of home, but none of its warmth. Range 1240, wind steady at 5 knots cross. We're in their sweet spot. Ramirez adjusted her dope sheet, eyes never leaving the valley. The math danced in her head. Distance, humidity, Coriolis drift. Her jaw tightened until it ached. Tex tried again, softer. Command hasn't cleared us. We take the shot, it's our careers. Maybe worse. Silence stretched between them, broken only by the distant cough of mortars and the clipped panic of Marines calling for ammo they didn't have. Below, the enemy massed for the final push. Through the scope, Maya watched an RPG team crawl into position behind a boulder, their launch tube angled toward the command post. She steadied her breathing, feeling the trigger's cold curve under her finger. Orders said, "Wait." Every instinct screamed at. Range, 1,240 meters. Wind, steady 5 knots cross, left to right. Elevation, -7 degrees. Staff Sergeant Maya Ramirez ran the numbers again, her mind a silent metronome. One breath, one calculation, one decision. Protocol was crystal. No firing without battalion commander authorization. The order had not come, but the enemy RPG team was already on the move. 3 silhouettes crouched behind a boulder on the south ridge, the long tube of a launcher rising like a spear. Their angle pointed straight toward the Marine command post. Tex's voice cracked through the headset, low but urgent. "We're out of time, Ice. They launch. Command's gone." His spotting scope flickered as he tracked the target. Range confirmed 1240. Wind still 5 cross. You're clean. Ramirez inhaled slow, filling her lungs until the cold mountain air burned. She let half of it slip away, the way her father taught her in the New Mexico desert years before. Slow is smooth. Smooth is fast. Through the Schmidt and Bender scope, the world narrowed to a circle of moonlit rock and 3 moving figures. One fighter adjusted the RPG's sights. Another held the backblast shield. The third stood lookout, scanning for the faint shimmer of her position. They would fire in seconds. "Command, this is Raven 2, Tex whispered into the mic. "RPG team preparing to launch. Request immediate clearance. Static." No reply. Maya's finger tightened on the trigger. The 2-stage break felt like the edge of a cliff. She exhaled the final breath. Squeeze. The suppressed crack of the M40A6 was almost delicate against the roar of mortars. A heartbeat later, the RPG warhead erupted in a sudden blossom of fire, detonating before it ever left the tube. The lookout collapsed backward, body limp against the rocks. Radio silence swept the valley. Then chaos. Enemy fighters shouted in Dari, their heat signatures scattering across Maya's thermal view. Tex was already calling adjustments. "Second target, North Boulder, 2 meters left of the burn mark." "Send it, bolt cycle." Another squeeze. A second silhouette dropped, weapon clattering down the slope. Third target, ridge crest, running west. Hold 2 mills high for slope. Ramirez compensated for uphill drift, fired, and watched the figure spin and disappear behind a ledge. Fourth target, mortar team repositioning, back of the tree line. Range 1230. She barely felt the trigger break before the 4th fighter folded. Below, Marines seized the sudden window. Platoons scrambled from cover, shifting positions and calling fresh coordinates. Artillery batteries locked onto new grids as forward observers relayed Maya's kill data. Within minutes, the valley thundered with friendly steel, howitzer rounds raining into enemy staging areas and shredding their momentum. Tex lowered his scope, a slow grin cutting through the tension. "A hell of a night to break the rules." Ramirez stayed prone, eye still to the reticle, scanning for any survivors who might try again. Careers could be sacrificed later. For now, 480 Marines were still breathing. The valley was still shaking when the first squads began their fighting withdrawal. Under the cover of Ramirez's precision fire, Marines broke contact in disciplined bursts, 2 men moving, while 2 covered, leapfrogging through the shattered creek beds. Every shot from the plateau bought seconds. Every second meant another life pulled out of the kill box. Artillery thundered overhead, the delayed answer to hours of desperate radio calls. The first 155mm rounds landed like a hammer from the gods, flattening enemy staging points on the eastern ridge. Shockwaves rolled through the basin, sending dust plumes skyward and forcing the fighters into chaotic retreat. Secondary explosions, ammunition caches cooking off, lit the night in sudden orange blooms. Comms lit up with overlapping reports. "Alpha 1 moving. Casualties stable. Charlie 2 exfil secure. Enemy fire diminishing on all fronts." From her perch, Staff Sergeant Maya Ramirez tracked each call with steady eyes. Her rifle rested against the sandbags, bolt locked back, barrel cooling in the cold mountain air. She keyed her mic once, voice flat and professional. "Raven 2 to Alpha 6. Targets neutralized. Overwatch complete. No bravado. No apology." A break in the weather opened a narrow window for medevac. Rotors thumped through thinning cloud as the first CH-47 Chinooks dropped into the valley. Their landing lights cut ghostly cones across the smoke, while corpsmen loaded the wounded, some on stretchers, others leaning on brothers who refused to let go. For the first time in hours, the radio carried something other than panic, the low, controlled cadence of Marines counting survivors. Dawn crept over the Hindu Kush with a pale, icy glow. Battalion Alpha conducted a final roll call in the shadow of the ridges. 480 Marines answered. Every single one. 0 fatalities. Higher command arrived by Black Hawk as the sun cleared the peaks. A colonel in crisp camouflage stepped from the rotor wash, face carved from granite. His eyes swept the battered perimeter, the smoke rising from enemy positions. Then the observation plateau where Ramirez stood at ease beside her rifle. Reports were exchanged, casualties tallied, enemy body counts logged. Then the inevitable confrontation, the colonel's voice carried above the fading rotors. "Staff Sergeant Ramirez, did you discharge your weapon without authorization?" "Yes, sir," she answered, eyes forward, tone steady. Targets presented imminent threat to battalion command post. A long pause followed, broken only by the hiss of cooling metal. Protocol demanded reprimand. Everyone present knew it. But behind the colonel, 480 Marines stood alive because she had broken the rule. The officer's jaw tightened. "Understood," he said finally. "Return to base for debrief. No praise, no handshake. Just an order to stand down, delivered to a sniper who had already changed the outcome of a battle before sunrise." 2 weeks later, the official paperwork finally caught up with Staff Sergeant Maya Ramirez. A formal letter of reprimand slid across a polished desk at Camp Leatherneck, language heavy with unauthorized engagement and violation of command authority. The signature block waited for a commanding officer's pen, but alongside the reprimand came the field reports. Every after-action review told the same story. A sniper team whose precision fire shattered an ambush and saved a battalion. Forward observers documented exact shot placements, each one lethal, each one preventing a direct hit on friendly forces. Casualty lists told the louder truth: 0 killed, minimal wounded. Despite overwhelming enemy numbers, the reprimand was quietly filed, then quietly shelved. No ceremony, no public acknowledgement. Inside the chain of command, however, the conversation changed. The engagement forced a review of the Marine Corps' sniper protocols. New drafts of the rules of engagement began circulating, language allowing scout snipers to initiate fire in rapidly developing threat scenarios when higher command cannot respond in time. The amendment would take months to clear, but the seeds were planted the night Maya broke the rule. Letters began arriving before she even left Afghanistan. Handwritten notes on Marine Corps stationery. Emails routed through the battalion's comms clerk. Most were brief, simple thank yous from men and women who had shared that valley of fire. One letter stood apart. A young private, barely 20, wrote of hearing the first sniper shot echo through the basin. "I thought we were done," he wrote. "Then your round hit and the mortars stopped. I've seen every sunrise since, because you didn't wait for permission." The words were shaky, but the meaning was clear. A life continued because one Marine trusted her own judgment. Maya read the letter once, folded it carefully, and tucked it inside the back cover of her field notebook, the same one filled with wind charts and range tables. It stayed there through redeployment, through the long flight home, through the quiet nights when memory of the valley returned with the smell of cordite and cold mountain air. No medal ever came. No public citation reached the news. Her name remained a line in a classified report, known only to those who were there. But the men and women of Battalion Alpha carried a private understanding. Courage isn't measured by headlines or ribbons. It's measured by the lives that continue, the families reunited, the birthdays celebrated, the simple act of breathing another morning. Tonight, as you hear this story, take a moment to honor those who serve in silence. Their decisions are rarely easy, and sometimes the right choice is the one no manual approves. If this story moved you, share it, comment where you're watching from, and subscribe for more true accounts of courage under fire. Because sometimes a single calculated defiance, one steady breath, one trigger squeeze, can keep hundreds of hearts beating for another day.